Hi everyone, and welcome back to Level E Overview. We will be covering lessons 41 through 44 this week, and you will need worksheets 26 through 28, your drawing board, T-square, and triangles, tape, the fraction charts, the math card games book, and your fraction cards deck, and the basic number cards deck. Let's go ahead and get started with lesson 41. So we'll be working on finding equivalent fractions using the drawing tools and learning what the word terms means in relationship to fractions. After the oral warm-ups, you'll ask questions regarding the worksheet. Notice that the top part of the worksheet is two fraction charts side by side. You will write 2 divided by 5 in fraction form. So you could either do that on the flip side of the worksheet or on your drawing board. And then you ask your child to read it and then explain what it means. So the answers we're looking for are, this is 2/5, and that is 2 1/5, or they could say 2 divided into 5 equal pieces. Either way is correct. It would be good to tell them the second way if they don't already give you 2 answers. So if they say it's 2 1/5, that's great. You can say it's also 2 divided into 5 equal parts. So from here, your child will use the T-square and triangle to figure out what is equal to 1/2. As your child reads off the fractions that are equivalent to 1/2, you'll write them down, and then you'll ask, what pattern do you see? Give your child the time to think about that. And if they can't see a pattern, then you could ask the question, how does the top number relate to the bottom number? Okay, so do you see how that would be leading your child into discovery by asking questions rather than giving them the answers, right? Okay, so notice the comment in the explanation column. It says that the child should know the concept or the word before introducing vocabulary. And here we're going to be introducing the words terms and lowest terms. So in this case, they know the concept, but they are not familiar with the words, okay? You will continue examining the charts and looking at equivalent fractions. For example, for 2 halves, 3/9, and 9/6. Then you'll draw a line. So maybe on the other side of the drawing board, you can just flip it over and have your child label different fractions such as 1/2 and 1/4. This is done freehand and by eyeballing it, the location on that line. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but it should be, a pretty close approximation. So when your child starts to complete the worksheet, notice that the T-square and triangle can be used to find exactly where to put the marks. Let me show you.
Okay, so here we have worksheet 26, and we've already asked questions about the chart. The kids have already observed that. You've already drawn a line, and they've divided that line or put marks where, 1/4 and 1/2 are. But now it says, use your drawing tools and the 2 fraction charts above to mark and label the following fractions. So here we have it taped down. I have my T-square hugging the board, and I'll use the straight edge of the triangle to find 1/2. So where is 1/2 on this chart? It is right here. And I'm just going to draw a little tick mark and label it 1/2. Okay. Then it says to do 1/3, so we can go to where the 1/3 line is up here. Line it up, draw a little tick mark, and label it 1/3. Now let's skip over to 1 and 1/4 so that I can show you how to do it with both charts. So here we have the 1, that's where the first chart ends, and we just need to line the triangle up with 1/4, which is up here, and draw the line. And so then that would be 1 and 1/4. Okay? Pretty simple, but sometimes it's a little confusing how to correlate the fraction charts above with the lines below.
Okay, so when your child is done with the worksheet, go ahead and ask the questions for the in conclusion part, and then play Magic Squares Memory, which is A60 in the Math Card Games book. And it's also available on the website. All right, moving on to lesson 42. We will be finding halves of halves using our drawing tools. The oral warm-ups will be reviewing fractions. So did you know that you could find the midpoint of a line without measuring? Let's go ahead and take a look at what that looks like.
Okay, let's take a look at the first problem on worksheet 27. It says, use the t-square and 30/60 triangle to find and label the following fractions. So I'm going to show you how to divide a line in half so you can find the exact midpoint of it without having to measure it. So I'm going to use my t-square. Remember, it's hugging the side of the board. And I'm going to line the end of the triangle up over here with this corner on the underneath the 1, okay? And then I'm going to draw approximately, I'm going to kind of guess where the midpoint is I'm going to draw a line. Draw it big enough that you can, make mistakes and still get the right answer. Okay, and I'll explain what that means in a second. So I'm going to flip over my triangle. I'm going to now line it up with the corner over here where the 0 is. And I'm going to draw a line. So do you see how, since I drew a long enough line the first time, even if I was wrong, I was still within, the right area. So now I have this cross up here, and that shows me exactly where the middle of this line is. So I just line my triangle straight edge up with the center of that X, and then I draw a tick mark down here and label it 1/2. Okay, now the same thing can be done for the rest of the problem. I'll show you what 1/4 would be looking like. So I'm going to line the edge of the triangle up with my 1/2 mark. Go ahead and kind of estimate where 1/2 would be. Half of a half is a 1/4. Line the triangle up with the 0 section and draw a line. Where it intersects, that's going to be the 1/4 mark. So you line the straight edge up with the triangle, with the X in the middle, and then you get a line, tick mark, that you can label 1/4.
Okay, so that's what your child is going to do for problem number 1. Notice in problem number 2 that your child will divide a square into halves, fourths, eighths, and 16ths. The first 2 are done with just diagonals, but for the eighths, a horizontal and a vertical line must be drawn as well. If your child isn't sure which triangle to use for problem number 3, have her put a triangle up to the little picture that's on the left of the second triangle and see which triangle lines up properly. So that would be the one that you could use. Also, the second triangle, in the second triangle dividing into fourths, your student will need to draw a tick mark indicating the midpoint of the baseline. Your child's answer for the halves and the eighths may look different from the book, and I will give you an example of what that might look like. Okay, so here is most likely what your child will draw for dividing a triangle into half, but they could also divide it this way or this way. Okay, for fourths, this is what the book shows. First, you're going to have to find the center of the baseline and make a tick mark. And then you draw the 2 side lines and then the horizontal line. So that's the triangle into fourths. And so from the fourths, your child can divide the triangle into eighths. So this is one way, and this is the way that the book shows as one of the answers. But another way would be this. So either of those would be perfectly fine. Okay, so after your child finishes the worksheet, ask the in conclusion questions and then play double the fraction memory, which is F5 in the Math Card Games book. In lesson 43, your student will become more familiar with the fraction chart and find fractions that are closest to 0, half, and 1. Remember that though quick and easy, the warm-ups are important and help to review concepts. If your child is struggling with getting the correct answer, make sure to slow down and have them work through the questions with manipulatives, perhaps. In this case, you would use the fraction chart. In the exercises, naming fractions closest to 0, 1, and 1/2, your student is using the triangle to identify the answers. Any straight edge would work. The nice thing about the triangle is that you can see through it so that you know you're lined up properly. Under the section naming fractions closest to 1/2, I just have a clarification. The sentence reads, tell her to find the name and name the 5 fractions that are half of a whole or 1. And that means half of a whole or half of 1, just in case it sounded funny the way it was written. Notice the comment in the explanations column. The note says, in part, in our concern about the memorization of math facts or solving problems, we must not forget that the root of mathematical study is the creation of mental pictures in the imagination and manipulating those images and relationships using the power of reason and logic. So when working with these fractions, it's good for the child to practice picturing in his or her mind how those pieces actually relate to one another. The game today is described in the lesson. It is called Fraction Closest To. It's similar to what we've been doing. Ask the 3 in conclusion questions and then you're done. Our last lesson this week is lesson 44, in which we will sketch and shade fractions and find equivalent fractions. The multiplication warm-ups are on the worksheet, number 28 today. After correcting those and moving on to the sketching fractions section in the lesson book, first you'll demonstrate how to divide a rectangle into fourths. Make sure to ask your child questions along the way and notice that tick marks are much easier to erase than lines. Let's look at what this looks like in fourths and thirds.
So here I'm going to go ahead and draw a rectangle. It's not going to be perfect, but you just draw it as best you can. And I'm asking the child to estimate where halfway is and put a tick mark. So I would say it's probably about there. And then I'm going to try to get a fourth. So what is a fourth? Well, it's half of a half. So I'm going to estimate where half is here. Probably good. And then also over here. Okay. Then once they're happy with where their tick mark is, they can draw a line to actually divide the rectangle into fourths. Now the instructions said to crosshatch 1/4. So I'm just going to crosshatch that first one. Okay? All right, let's move on to the thirds. Thirds is a little bit more difficult. So I'm going to draw my rectangle again. And I want to estimate 1/3. So the first third needs to be half of the remaining area. So I am going to say it's probably there. Now sometimes it's good to make another mark just to see. I'm a little bit off and I'm not happy with that. So I'm going to go ahead and go back here and make the line. I think it's more like that. Okay, that looks better to me. So here's 1/3. And then this is 2/3. So I can go ahead and divide the rectangle into thirds. And the book does not say to crosshatch anything, but you could show them that, okay, you could crosshatch 1/3, or you could crosshatch 2/3, for example.
Actually, the book does say to crosshatch 1/3. So go ahead and have your child do that. Then they can do the first 3 problems and show you their work. Check those to make sure that they're correct, and then your child could finish the rest of the worksheet on their own. Ask the in-conclusion questions, and then play the game from the last lesson, lesson 43, which is fraction closest to. That's all for this week, and I hope you have a good one. Next week, we will be covering lessons 45 through 48. Bye.